I'm Joel McGill, and I'm the National Coordinator of All America, and this is my story. I was raised by a single mom, working 2 jobs. Used to work at McGill during the day, doing admin and sales stuff, and then worked at like JCPenney at night or something like that, some department store, trying to raise 3 kids with no child support in the city of Chicago. So translation, I got in a lot of trouble. So I started running the streets just really young. We had a fight club in our neighborhood that we were part of. We had a committee that would organize fights for new kids that moved into the neighborhood. So you'd get sized up, and then you'd get invited to go play, and you'd walk into an alley where I was waiting for you to beat you up, just to welcome you to the thing. So we had a full-on organizational thing. Started doing a little stuff, robbing houses and things like that, and stealing from stores, and just petty stuff compared to what I got involved into a bit later. That just continued to escalate. Had a lot of abuse, was just getting no supervision, no one looking up. So I was sexually abused by 2 different people, babysitters, stuff like that when I was a kid. Physically abused, just craziness, just the devil throwing the kitchen sink at little Joel. That escalated. So in Chicago, this thing with the school system where you can go to high schools based on what grades you get, in elementary or junior high. So if you get A's, you can go to this many schools. You can kind of have your pick. If you get B's, you have this many. If you get C's, you have this many. And if you get D's and F's like I did, you basically get like one school that you go to. So that was the school I went to. I had a 1.45 GPA when I was a freshman. I was in the top 50% of my class. And it gives you an idea. So when I went to that school, I was like, I'm going to die here, basically. And so just out of survival, I decided to make friends with the biggest, toughest gangsters I could find. And so I started running one of the bigger gangs in Chicago, and got caught up in that whole deal and started selling drugs at school. A little weed and stuff like that. And that's just continued to escalate. By the age of 15, I had 2 different groups trying to kill me. I had actually had the KKK, the skinheads, actually in my Italian neighborhood were coming after me for race mixing. And then I had the gang at the school. People were trying to gain rank, so they were coming after me because I was the white guy. So I was getting all sorts of racial profiling going on in my life, strangely. And a buddy of mine got stabbed and killed, and I figured I had like 6 months before it was me next. It's just a lot of stuff were heating up, back up, having to call on over and over again just to make it home, And anyway, in the midst of all that, this guy that I knew from my neighborhood said, "Hey, do you want to come to my church?" And I was like, whatever. And he said, "Well, we have this youth group you can come to." And I said, "Well, what do you guys do there?" And they said, "They play basketball." I'm like, "I like basketball. That's cool." And I said, "Are there girls?" He said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Sounds great."
Sounds great.
I don't know why I didn't go to this thing before. It's wonderful. So I showed up. So I showed up at this youth group, and then I found out all these Christian girls like the bad boy thing, so that worked out really well. So I just hooked up with all these Christian girls. They loved that, so I was like, hey, this works out great, And so I really loved youth group and go mac on these girls and we're, whatever. And anyway, so I'm at this retreat thing, which I thought was great. Now they can't run away, they're going to be all in this retreat. And it's the mid-90s, so I'm sitting in the back. I got my baggy pants, I got my walk with a limp, even though I wasn't hurt, and got the whole, tough guy thing. And I was as big as I am now then, I'm 15 years old. And I'm sitting there, and this guy starts preaching the gospel and talking about how if you give your life to Jesus, you get a whole new one. And I just started thinking to myself, I've ruined my life. In 15 years. I don't even know if I'm going to survive the next 6 months. And this guy is talking about a whole new life. And I go, man, I could really use that. So I'm thinking that through, just pondering it. And then in the midst, I had this encounter with Jesus, started physically shaking. And I'm sitting in the back trying to look cool while I'm physically shaking in the presence of God, and just encountered Jesus, just got undone. And, so they pulled me outside, I put my hand up, whatever, pulled me outside, and they're like, "Joel, we're so excited for you, and they're like, "Do you know what you just did?" And I said, yeah, I totally get it, I didn't know what's going on, but I didn't want to look dumb. So I was like, yeah, I know all about it, And they literally said to me, Joel, you go to one of the roughest schools in Chicago. You're the first kid we've ever met that's a Christian at your school. Here's a Bible. Good luck. It's going to be really hard. And that's literally was the first thing they said to me after I gave my life to Jesus. And again, I got a 1.45 GPA. They hand me a book. That's like, so I'm like, yeah, right. So I go home, throw the book in my room somewhere and just forget about it. And I was trying to figure out, okay, I'm a Christian now. What does that mean? So I'm like, I think Christians don't swear. And so I'm like, all right, I got to change. I knew I had to change. And so I'm like, I'm going to stop swearing. And so my buddies would come, they'd get in my car and they'd say, they'd get in, they start swearing, and I'd stop them and I'd say, listen, I'm a Christian now. So here's the deal. You can't swear around me or in my car. And if you do, you have to pay me money or I'm going to throw you out of my car and I'm going to beat you up, right? I'm going to beat you up or you're paying me money. This was my evangelism. This was my outreach, right? I was like, I got to do what I got, and so they did. They paid me money. They could say a swear word or whatever. And one guy didn't. I put my foot in his back, opened his door, and started shutting him out in the car while we were driving. And anyway, that went on for a while. Things were still heating up at school. My mom randomly picked me up from school one day. And I was like, what are you doing here? And she said, get in the car. She said, I quit my jobs. We're moving, and I'm getting you out of the city. I'm going to save your life. And she didn't even know. She had no idea people were actually trying to kill me.
Wow.
So that was like a sovereign miracle, just crazy. Think of in her position, So we kicked my older sister out of the house, which is a long story. And then my other sister went off to school, and then she and I just moved up to suburbs. I'm sitting in the suburbs. I got no job. I got no friends. I got no, I'm sitting out there, and I'm just like, well, I grabbed the Bible, and I think they said something about every answer to life was in this book. So I grabbed the book, and I needed a job. So I turned on the table of contents. First book of the Bible I ever read was a book that I thought was going to tell me how to get a job, right? So that was like my deal. So I would turn to that thing, right? Read the whole thing, which by the end of it, I was just pissed. I was so mad. I was like, this thing is not about getting a job whatsoever, right? And I'm so mad. I throw the Bible across the room, and I'm just like, this is weird. What a weird story, the whole deal. And this like thought enters my head, which was different than my own, totally different tone, totally different kind of way of talking. And the thought says to me, well, at least you're not as messed up as that guy and his family and the whole situation. God talks to me like he's from Chicago, so that helped me a lot. And so he's like, it's not as messed up as those people. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's true. I'm like, wow, this thing really does, it didn't get me a job, but it made me feel better about my situation, and feel like got some perspective. I'm like, what else is in this thing? I grab the Bible, flip over to 2 Corinthians, just skipping everything, just flip it over. I'm like, wow, there is more to this than not swearing. Like, this is amazing, and I start getting, and that summer, I started reading the Bible like crazy. And I couldn't get enough about Jesus. I turned on the radio, I was trying to find anything. I found Moody Radio, and then I flipping through the TV and found some dude named John Hagee and listening to him. I was like, anything I could find. And I used to just sit there with Moody Radio on, John Hagee on, and the Bible, and just like anything I could find about Jesus. So that summer, I prayed what I call the most dangerous prayer I ever prayed in my life that summer. And I was just encountering Jesus in my living room, in my room, just in the Word and all these things. And so I prayed this prayer. It was so weird. I didn't talk like this, didn't act like this, whatever. But I said, God, would you give me your heart for all people? Old, young, black, white, would you give me your heart? And I hit the ground and began to just weep. And I probably hadn't cried in like 5 years since I've been like a street fighter or something, I kind of closed that off just out of survival. I used to harden my heart. I used to be in the bathroom just punching the wall, just trying to sever levels of pain just to survive, right? And so I'm on the ground just weeping and wailing. I always say it like a Middle Eastern woman at a funeral. I'm just wailing and weeping this deep thing. And I'm just this is so weird. And I just had no idea I served a God with a broken heart, And so that day, I just said, I'm going to give the rest of my life to minister to that broken heart. Everything I do, everything for the rest of my life is going to be about easing that pain. It's really, and I still feel that, I'm never more complicated than that prayer. But that prayer ruined me for the ordinary. You know, it was like, okay, now I gotta. And I'd say the second most dangerous prayer I ever prayed in my life was when I couldn't get into any school for college because my grades were so bad. I prayed this prayer and I was like, God, I got 6 months, like, where I don't know what I'm going to do. What do you want to do with me? I didn't realize how dangerous that prayer was, right? And so within a period of time, I'm headed to Australia to do a DTS, and I'm just like, I'm going to do YWAM, and I'm just like, these are like missionaries, man. Like 3 years ago, I was robbing houses and like beating people up and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna go YWAM missionaries. I'm like, these guys are gonna be like elite, right? I'm like, I'm gonna be like they're gonna kick me out in like 2 weeks when they figure out how messed up I am, you know. And I get into YWAM and I start meeting my roommates in this discipleship training school, and this guy above me was like on Europol like watch list and was a drug dealer and all this stuff, and I was like, this is my people. Like, this is my tribe. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I started meeting people. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like one guy, he was from England. He became a doctor, got like a degree in medicinal chemistry just so he could make better drugs. Like this was like, I said, oh my gosh, like this is my guys, you know. And you know, just was profound. I was on outreach in Nepal, and I'm sitting. We're 8 hours outside of Kathmandu, and I'm sitting in staring at the Annapurna Mountains, living in a mud hut, preaching the gospel, going village to village, saying whole villages come to Jesus, and and I'm just shocked at what YWAM let me do. You know what I mean? Like what stupid people to be like, take this thug and let him like preach the gospel and do all these things. I'm like, no one would ever let me do anything, and YWAM was just throwing me out there, just go for it, no qualifications, no whatever, just throw it. And so I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I'm even getting to do stuff like this, right? And I'm sitting up one morning like 5:30 having my quiet time, and the Lord says to me, he goes, do you like this? And I was like, yeah, I like this. He goes, good, this is what I've called you to. You're not going back to do anything else. And so anyway, that's kind of my little journey of really, I had a 1.45 GPA, nickname my family was loser. I had no future, no hope. And so when I gave my life to Jesus, I'm like, listen, I got nothing. I'm not bringing anything to the squad. I got nothing to bring you. But if you'll use me, I'll give you everything I have. And so just been so humbled, just as the Lord loves to take those foolish things, loves to take, I call it the spiritual advantage, that stuff, when you just don't think you have anything to offer. He has a lot to work with and to fill in. So I started with Youth of Mission then, and that was January of 2000. And so I've been in Wyoming 22 years, and got an education in the nations out there, working in Asia and all over the place, and just had such a privilege to be able to do that. Got linked up with a guy named Mark Anderson in the year 2003, and the Lord, I'd always been like a street evangelist, like I just go get up on buses, start yelling at people and doing, that was kind of my, my evangelism, just real quick. So when I started in my new school, I would go into class, and I just start preaching the gospel to everybody, and they start arguing with me, and the teachers argue with me, and I just debate them. And just every class that I didn't care about education, so I was like, these people have to be here. I'm just going to go for it. And I used to tell, this was like my evangelism, I was still trying to figure it out, and I would ask people, they would find out from the city, and I ran with gangs, they'd all get really excited, these suburban kids, and they'd say, oh, you're from the city. Wow. Like, hey, do you want to come party with us? And they had all this money and all this stuff, and they invite me to these parties, and I'd say, do you know Jesus? And they're like, sort of. And I'm like, do you live for him? And they're like, no. I said, you're an idiot. You must be the dumbest person in the world. Do you know what he did for you? And you sit there and you live for yourself? I should hit you in your face. How dare you? That was like my evangelism, right? I was like, I just couldn't believe that they knew what he had done, and they would just totally be oblivious, and live for themselves and stuff. So I didn't lead anybody to Jesus, by the way. That doesn't work at all. They mostly just ran from me. And anyway, so just I laugh with the Lord wrote about it. It's like, I think God would much rather have zeal with some ignorance and have all the info and not do anything with it.
Amen.
So